March 17, 1942. Chicago welcomes a child who will become one of America's most notorious killers. John Wayne Gacy, Jr. enters a world where violence will shape his very existence. His father, John Stanley Gacy, rules the household with an iron fist and uncontrollable rage. Young Gacy endures years of brutal beatings and psychological torture from the man who should protect him. The abuse plants seeds of violence that will eventually consume everything in their path. As a teenager, Gacy begins displaying the manipulation and cruelty that will define his future crimes. Teachers and neighbors notice his unsettling behavior, but no one intervenes to stop what's coming. By 1968, Gacy has married and moved to Iowa, presenting himself as a respectable businessman. But behind closed doors, he's already targeting vulnerable young employees at his restaurant. Multiple teenage boys become victims of his sexual assaults, trapped by his position of power. When one brave victim finally speaks out, Gacy's carefully constructed facade begins to crumble. December 3, 1968. Gacy pleads guilty to sodomy charges involving a 15-year-old employee. The judge sentences him to 10 years in Iowa State Reformatory, believing prison will reform this dangerous man. But as Gacy disappears behind those walls, his true evolution into a monster is just beginning. If you're finding value in this, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. As we discussed, Gacy had been sentenced to 10 years for sexual assault. But the system would fail catastrophically. June 1970. After serving only 18 months, John Wayne Gacy walked free on parole. The parole board believed he was reformed. They couldn't have been more wrong. Gacy immediately moved to Chicago, a fresh start in a new city where nobody knew his past. Within months, he met Carol Hoff, the divorced mother of 2 young daughters. They married quickly. Gacy was building the perfect facade of respectability, but the mask was already slipping. In 1971, another sexual assault charge. The victim failed to appear in court. The charges were dismissed. Once again, Gacy had escaped consequences. The pattern was becoming clear. He founded PDM Contractors, a construction company that would become his perfect cover. Gacy threw himself into community work, charity events, political campaigns, local organizations. To neighbors and colleagues, he was a successful businessman and pillar of the community. But behind closed doors, the real John Wayne Gacy was preparing for something far more sinister. By 1975, all the pieces were in place. The killing would soon begin. January 1976. John Wayne Gacy crossed the line from predator to killer. Timothy McCoy, 16 years old, a runaway from Michigan who made the fatal mistake of trusting the wrong man. Gacy lured McCoy to his Summerdale home with promises of work and shelter. What happened next would establish Gacy's killing pattern for the next 3 years. After the murder, Gacy faced his first disposal problem. Where do you hide a body? The crawl space beneath his house became his solution, his first burial ground. McCoy's disappearance went unnoticed. Gacy had chosen his victim type perfectly. Young men. Runaways. Drifters people society wouldn't immediately miss. Throughout 1976 and 77, more victims followed the same deadly pattern. Each burial in the crawl space made the next one easier. Gacy was perfecting his system. But his secret was becoming harder to hide. His wife Carol began noticing disturbing changes. Strange smells emanating from the house. Unexplained digging in the yard at night. Gacy's behavior grew increasingly erratic. His mask of normalcy was slipping. By 1977, Carol filed for divorce. She couldn't live with the man her husband had become. With his wife gone, Gacy was now completely alone with his deadly secrets, and his killing was just beginning. By 1977, John Wayne Gacy had perfected his deadly routine, but what came next would shock even seasoned investigators. The killings escalated beyond anything seen before. Multiple victims per month. A factory of death operating beneath the surface of suburban normalcy. Young men continued to disappear from Chicago streets. Runaways. Drifters. Anyone who wouldn't be immediately missed. But Gacy was building something else during this period. A public persona that would become legendary for all the wrong reasons. Pogo the Clown was born. Gacy's alter ego for community events and children's parties. The perfect mask for a predator. While entertaining children by day, Gacy was murdering their peers by night. The contradiction was as calculated as it was chilling. The bodies piled up faster than Gacy could dispose of them. His backyard burial ground was reaching capacity. Space was running out. Gacy needed a new disposal method. The rivers of Illinois would become his solution. Bodies began surfacing in waterways around Chicago, but investigators hadn't yet connected them to the friendly contractor from Norwood Park, December 11, 1978. 15-year-old Robert Peast left his job at a pharmacy to meet a contractor about work. He told his mother he'd be back in an hour. Robert Peast would never come home. But this time was different. Robert's family wouldn't let him just disappear. They demanded answers. The pharmacy manager remembered the contractor's name. For the first time, police had a direct lead to John Wayne Gacy. Gacy's reign of terror was about to end. December 13, 1978. Police officers approached the modest ranch house on North Somerdale Avenue with a search warrant in hand. They were searching for evidence in the disappearance of 15-year-old Robert Peast. They had no idea they were about to uncover America's worst mass murder scene. Within hours, the search team detected something horrifying. A putrid, overwhelming stench rising from beneath the floorboards. When investigators pried open the crawlspace entrance, the smell became unbearable. Something unspeakable lay hidden beneath John Wayne Gacy's home. The first body was discovered wrapped in plastic, buried in lime. Then another, and another. As investigators began systematic excavation, the true scope of Gacy's killing spree became horrifyingly clear. Body after body emerged from the fetid earth. Young men who had simply vanished without a trace. The media descended like vultures. News crews broadcast live from the house that had become synonymous with evil. For weeks the excavation continued. Each new discovery sent shockwaves through the community and across the nation. 26 bodies were ultimately recovered from Gacy's property. 26 young lives ended in the crawlspace beneath his feet. On December 22, 1978, John Wayne Gacy was formally arrested and charged with murder. Under intense interrogation, after the discovery of 33 bodies, the world waited for justice. But John Wayne Gacy wasn't finished manipulating the system. February 1980. The trial of the century begins. Gacy's defense team had one desperate strategy: the insanity defense. They claimed Gacy was mentally ill, unable to control his actions. But the prosecution painted a different picture: a calculated predator who knew exactly what he was doing. Witness after witness testified to Gacy's methodical planning, his ability to deceive, his cold manipulation. March 13, 1980. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Death sentence. Gacy showed no emotion as the verdict was read. But death would not come quickly. Gacy was transferred to Menard Correctional Center to await execution. 14 years. 14 years of appeals, delays, and legal maneuvering while families waited for closure. Gacy spent his time painting, selling his artwork, still seeking attention, still manipulating from behind bars. May 10, 1994. After years of delays, Gacy's final appeal was denied. 12:18 a.m. Lethal injection. Even in his final moments, Gacy remained defiant. His last words? Quote, "Kiss my ass." Unquote. No remorse, no apology to the families. John Wayne Gacy died as he lived. Without conscience, without humanity, a monster to the very end. Justice delayed.